Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. If you have been thinking about setting up your own consulting practice, you can visit umbrex.com and there's a link, set up your own firm. Check that out. We have a guide with 90 videos and 30 templates you can download. Walks you through everything I've learned in over 1,000 conversations and 12 years of being an independent. I'm Will Bachman, and I'm here today with my guest, Bethel Desmond, who is the founder of the Content Corp. And when she was at IBM, she had probably the coolest title at IBM. Beth, your title was Chief Storyteller. Tell us about
Yes, it
that.
was, Will.
Beth, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about being Chief Storyteller at IBM. What did that mean?
Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be here, Will, because I think it's such an incredibly important time in marketing and content marketing right now. I remember I got a phone call from the CEO of the firm I went to work for, and he said, Beth, he said, you need to help me. He said, I have 5,000 consultants here, and none of them are publishing. Now, consultants are expected to publish much like academics, but these really, really insightful, intelligent human beings were not being supported in writing their stories about the incredible, important work they were doing. So that's when my wonderful friend and leader Ishmael Amla brought me on to start working for his people. And we had a miraculous success in our program once we explained to people the importance of storytelling and got our processes set up. We were able to produce over 100 beautiful, articulate, insightful articles in a 6-month period because people were so excited to tell their stories, and now they finally had the support to do so.
Amazing. Uh, so you have kind of a perspective where you call the content revolution. Tell me what you think is changing with content and about your sort of philosophy on it.
Okay, great. Yes, I feel very strongly about what's going on in the market, and I'm going to say that the last couple of months in our world has just exasperated the need for change, right? So I'm thinking about what are the three things that are changing that are going to affect business communications. One thing is the seriousness after COVID. Okay, we're seeing it in the way people lash out at people in the media who they actually like. Ellen DeGeneres or Kim Kardashian. Ellen says no more dancing Ellen. Kim Kardashian says no more duck lips, kisses. People want important information that will help them make important decisions for themselves, their businesses, and their families. So nobody is going to tolerate fluff anymore. So I think that's a very, very important change. Social seriousness. How can you help me do a better job for myself and my family? The second moves out of the household of the individual doing the buying and moves into the larger social justice and social justice action. So people are no longer going to be satisfied with their companies as their companies having as their goal making money. People now want to see, how is this company that I am interacting with, that I am spending my money with, how are they helping the world? So that also is going to change content. Second part of the revolution. And then the third part, of course, has been in motion, but I think is just going to pick up speed. Evolving demographics. So something really interesting is that right now your Gen Xers are most of the people who are buying your products, but Gen Xers are, let's see, 35 to 51. But what's interesting is that the Gen Xers are listening to the Gen Zers. Now, the Gen Zers are the 2 to 17, born on the web and able to research anything at the click of, a button on their phone. And so interesting about the Gen Z, generation coming up the pike is that they spend twice as much time on their phones, okay, as their millennial cousins. And they purchase 80% of their goods and services while they are reading stories in social media. So that really needs to be said again. 80% of what these guys are buying, they're buying while they're reading stories. So really important. But if you say, okay, 17, Beth, that's far away from me, then let's at least look at the millennials. The millennials are going to spend an incredible $1.4 trillion next year. And here's a statistic that should scare every marketing firm out there. Only 1% of millennials, when surveyed, are at all touched by traditional marketing approaches and ads. Less than 1%.
What does that mean, though? I mean, is that what they say in response? I mean, probably everybody says, "Oh, I don't pay attention to ads," but then you look at their behavior and they're totally influenced by ads. So, what does that mean when you say only 1% are influenced by traditional ads?
I mean, that those are findings from a survey, and I think, in the past there are all these theories around marketing. Oh, the funnel approach. First you give them this kind of story, then you give them that kind of story, and then you'll hook them this way and that way. I haven't found that to be the way that modern marketing works. So to give you an example, at my last client, when we were able to create those 100 articles in 6 months, the most important thing for us, of course, was to share those pieces. But we didn't have a budget to go out and pay for, big ads anywhere. And we didn't really want that to be our strategy. Instead, what we did was months and weeks before we published a piece on a certain subject, let's just say blockchain, we went in and we did a lot of social listening. So what were we looking for? We were looking for associations. We were looking for website, LinkedIn communities, websites, anyone who's interested in what was going on in the marketplace. And we very respectfully and transparently reached out to these individuals, media personalities or influencers, and we created a real bond built around the knowledge that we were forming about our industry. So when I'm saying that 1% of millennials it's only 1% of millennials that are reacting to ads. I'm not saying maybe you see a Coke ad and you want to have a Coke, but the way younger people are thinking about companies and the way that they want to be spoken to by companies that they do business with is vastly changing.
Okay, so we got three trends here. We talked about social seriousness. It'd be interesting to see if that kind of persists, or if it's a phase and people get a little bit tired of it and want to be entertained again or not. And then there's the social justice aspect and the demographics. Tell us, how do you think these changes are going to drive changes in marketing?
Well, there's going to have to be a very large change. To tell you the truth, historically, and I found this to be true with several corporations I've worked with, and the larger the corporation, the bigger the problem, is that the marketing group historically really sat sort of away from the business as usual group. They would do things like they'd canvass the market, they'd see what topics were being talked about, hire a ghostwriter, do a search for an SEO search to understand what words people are using, shove those words into the titles and the taglines, and then just smear the content anywhere they could to get a click through. But that's really a sort of old way of addressing problems or sharing content, because once they get to the click through, if it's not good information, then people are never going to click through to your site again. So that is going to be a challenge for companies to move into a new era. In the new era, the marketing professionals and the business leaders are going to have to come together. They're going to have to stand there shoulder by shoulder, and the marketing professionals are going to have to react as almost as reporters on real time happenings in the world, in all types of different businesses. So it becomes a totally different approach. And transformationally, it has to change from having the marketing department sit separate and create separately from our, brilliant business leaders out in the markets every day.
Okay. Um, you've talked about being sort of the tone of marketing and kind of tone and how you want to avoid being tone deaf. Talked about that a little bit.
Um, well, certainly. For instance, I just did an initial meeting for a client I had, and preparing for the meeting, I went and looked at their website. Well, the first thing that I saw was, "We are the best. We are the biggest. Our, company has the most this, that, and the other thing." But what I never heard was, how are you using those things that you have to help solve customers' problems who may look like me? Okay, so I call it a really bad case of the eyes, my's. Everything is about them. The second thing I noticed is that the only human on the entire website was that of the CEO. Everywhere you clicked was CEO. And the CEO knew everything about every subject that you could possibly imagine. So it felt to me, and I'm sure will feel like to modern readers, hey, guy, first of all, don't you have anyone else who works at the company? And secondly, can you tell me about human stories where your company has gone above and beyond to solve a challenge that a customer had? Those are the stories I want to hear in today's environment.
What are some companies that you think do a good job of that kind of storytelling?
That's a great question. I think that all of the Patagonias, the REIs, I feel like the sporting good companies and the outdoors firms really got it right from the very beginning. And so I often look to them as sort of the founders of this kind of content marketing, getting us involved and interested in their community without without the straw call to action. You have to buy my stuff, right?
So, so you're advocating a shift to more of a storytelling culture. Um, what has to happen within traditional marketing departments to make that happen?
Right. So that's a great question. So, the first thing that has to, when starting these programs, you really, really need to start at the top. And if you can get your business leaders and your marketing professionals together in the same room, then that is the very best place to start. But when I start with my clients, I first start with the leadership, at the board level, and I say, who are you today, and who do you want to become? I have a history of strategic consulting with the Big Four, so I've done these kinds of things before. But before I ask anyone to spend a minute or a dime on creating content, I want to know that that content is going to further the plans that this corporation has for itself, the goals that they put out for themselves. So the first thing, commit to creation. The second thing is arranging for storytelling. At one client I had 500 consultants, and we organized that consultancy into 34 different forums or think tanks. Let's say I had one for blockchain, I had one for artificial intelligence. In that way, I could keep circulating from forum to forum to forum, and we were able to generate this incredible content engine. So the other step number two is structuring your company for story. The third thing, assign responsibilities. I believe that publishing in your market sector should be expected on an annual basis. And a lot of leadership teams are leaning in that direction as well. And then, of course, go ahead and put a really great process together and make sure that the company, the internal workings of the company, that your team is aware of why we're investing in building a storytelling capability and getting their buy-in and energy and acceptance for the whole program.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so why don't you give us a little bit of a tutorial here? So for those of us listening who are running in an independent consulting practice and want to do more storytelling in our content creation, uh, how do you suggest people structure a story? How you've trained a lot of consultants on this. Walk us through how to how to kind of write and develop a good story.
Sure, great, no problem. So the first thing is, why do we even write or tell stories? And this has gone back through the ages, right? Stories basically are a means to organizing information. Okay, they allow us to understand something in a context. They allow us to remember it. Stories allow us to share information in the way it was shared to us. It allows us to learn. And good stories allow you to feel and encourages you to act. The average human being today gets over 3,000 marketing messages every single day. So if you're not telling a good story that's going to be memorable, you're wasting your money. So that's super important. And then when we actually sit down to write this story, it's so much fun. I can't tell you, the professionals that I've worked with have had such a great time working with us. They say this is the most amazing thing. When they write their articles, they say it's the first time I've ever shared anything with my kids, which always makes me feel great. But when you think about structuring the story, came up with a process that works really easily, and I call it the 4 Ps. So it's players, problem, plan, power. And I'll just walk you through quickly how I use that to create stories for my clients. So just recently, I did an article for a staging setup company. Staging is when they organize your home for sale. So then we sat down and we went through the story structure. So firstly, you've got players. Okay, what are the players? The players are the hero, the guide, and the villain. Now, in the 1980s, 90s, beginning of 2000s, the person selling the good or service was portrayed as the hero. That is completely changing now, guys. You are not the hero any longer. Your customer and your client is the hero. You are the guide, and of course, in this case, being a story about staging and selling real estate in a post-COVID environment, the villain was anything that makes the house look dark or damp or dirty. So the problem, oh, how am I going to sell my house post-COVID? The plan, here's your plan, a beautifully written article that we can help you do that. And the power was that this head of this family was able to sell their property in post-COVID market and successfully, care for their family. So that's basically it. Almost every story that you can think of will fall into that scenario, but it's helpful to have at the ready anyway. And then importantly, I just want to point out the process of creating the story. The easier you make it, the better. The people that you are going to be now interviewing within your firm when you adopt storytelling are going to be very, very busy individuals who have a lot of pressure and stress on them. So you want to make this process as easy as possible. What we do is we start with an hour-long interview with the subject matter expert at hand. We receive any documents or stories or statistics that he may want us to look at, and then we go ahead and we review his documents. Then we move into an independent research phase where we just spend a couple of days reading analyst reports and studies and statistics. Then once we get the copy written after research, we start looking for visuals, images, infographics, charts, tables, anything that's going to keep the reader reading and give the reader's eyes something pleasing to look at. We're very concerned with the lead image because that's the image that will pop up um, on your mobile device. And last but not least is, I think that was it. Yeah, the lead picture is very important because when you share that, that lead picture will pop up on your mobile device. And so those are the types of things that we think about. We put together a very, very, very explicit checks and balances where we're making sure everything has been edited and checked um, with legal, et cetera, et cetera. So the best thing to do is put very clear, transparent policy in place. And I promise if you do that, you'll start churning off stories like you can't believe.
And then what's your tips on, once you've created this content, of how to get it, shared so it's in the hands of the right person?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm really, really passionate about. I always say that 50% of the journey of getting content marketing correct is creating beautiful, insightful, intelligent content. That is only 50% of the job. The next job is responsible sharing. So, what I do every time I start with a new client, I immediately start doing social listening. So, again, let's assume my client is into blockchain. I would put a social listener or a group of them into trying to understand who is talking about blockchain in the industry. And then we very respectfully, transparently start to reach out to these individuals, be they industry pundits, influencers, peers of ours, whoever is talking about the industry. We reach out to them, we read their stuff, we compliment them on their accomplishments, and we start to build a customer base, really grassroots. And it pays off so nicely. But by the time we're ready to share our own content, we already have a very rich community that is only too happy to share on our behalf because we have been sharing on their behalf already for months. So it's one of the most satisfying ways to build a customer base and a social media sharing strategy. With my last client, we were able to reach 6.5 million new readers in a 6 month period with no paid advertising. So that was really just the work of several really smart young people doing social listening and respectfully, building our brand.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Well, Bethel, for someone who wanted to follow up with you, what's the best place for them to find you online?
Oh, thanks so much. So come and visit me at the Content Core, TheContenTCorp.org. Okay, so that's thecontentcorp.org. And all of our contents are there as well as a lot of our work.
Fantastic. Well, Bethel, thanks so much for joining today and giving us a perspective on the content revolution. And we will include that link in the show notes. So if you want to follow up, thecontentcorp.org, and that link's in the show notes. Bethel, thanks for joining today.
Thanks so much, Will.